Hi, it's Mary Jane Cox, the phone lady, with another video that focuses on the feedback, the comments we received when we did our 2025 survey on phone and video communication trends. One of the overarching things that we learned from what people shared, CEOs and senior executives, is that when it comes to real time conversations, whether they're on the phone or on video or in person, there is a lot of anxiety, fear, tremendous lack of confidence in communicating in real time. And so in this video, I want to step back a bit and take a look at what I call foundation skills. So I'm calling this back to basics. Four skills that improve every conversation, whether they are sales, whether they are customer service, but even when they are with family, friends, and colleagues. Of course, as always, my focus is sales and customer service. So I call these foundation skills because they are at the base of all the other skills we use in a conversation. There are a lot of skills involved in having a good conversation, in communicating in a clear, concise, effective way. But these foundation skills are always at play. And when you use them well, you are going to have better conversations. So the first one is tone of voice. And tone of voice matters every time we speak to someone, every time. Um, but we take it for granted, that tone of voice, right? Yet it's a tool that we have that we use to create conversation. In fact, it's perhaps our most powerful tool, but it's also a skill. It's also an art. And everyone can create and develop their tone for having real time conversations with someone. This is the definition of tone I really love because tone is a style of speaking that expresses our attitude. Wow. So it's our attitude towards our work, our attitude towards the other person, our attitude towards life, really. So it doesn't have to do with whether our voice is low or high, whether we have a lisp, a stutter, or an accent. That isn't what tone is. Tone is how you are expressing yourself and sharing your attitude, your personality with the other individual. So when we understand that having the right tone or developing our preferred tone is an art and a skill, what we're looking to do is create a tone that tells our prospect, our client, our customer that we're listening to them, that we care about them and their situation, that we can help, and that we're patient and kind. So, our ideal tone of voice in all situations is calm and patient and warm. That's what we're looking to create. And it represents our level of care for our company, our product, our service, but also for our customer, our client, our prospect. And this tone of voice helps us create trust and relationship. But it takes practice and discipline and focus to use this tone, have this tone available every time we're communicating. One of the things that I like to share with people is the tone of voice that I am using to create this video, for example, is not the tone of voice that I'm going to be using at the end of the day. In fact, this tone of voice that I use to talk to my camera is not the same tone of voice that I would use on the phone. It's a different tone of voice because talking to a camera isn't as intimate or as personal as speaking to one person on the phone or speaking to someone face to face. But it has taken me time, practice, discipline to create this tone of voice and be able to count on it. So, one of the things, if we are leading a team, we can think about is to create that practice time, to encourage that practice time. When we have our ideal tone of voice in place and we are using it regularly, what we're going to notice is it does allow us to create the calm partnership with the prospect, client, or customer that really allows us to dig into trust, relationship, and communicate in a really effective way. Also, should we run into situations like a constant talker or someone who's incredibly emotional, that tone of voice, that calm, warm, patient tone of voice, is going to limit the times those situations happen to us. But also, when they do, we're going to be able to handle them a lot better, a lot more effectively because of our tone of voice. So, we want to know that everyone reacts to tone of voice, even you. We are constantly reacting to tone of voice. One of the ways that we can own this is when we are making an outbound call, perhaps to a cable company or a cell phone company or a bank somewhere. What Pay attention to what happens when the other person answers the phone or your call and they are exhausted or they are bored or they are distracted. How does that impact you? Where does that take a conversation? And how would that be different if the person had answered with that warm, patient, kind voice? Also, pay close attention to conversations with colleagues and family and friends. Sometimes we're in a group and we're having a great conversation with people and we're laughing and having a wonderful time. And someone can join that conversation and introduce a different tone. Maybe they are tired, maybe they are bored, maybe they are frustrated or angry. And suddenly the tone of the entire conversation changes. And think about what tone of voice annoys you. Because there are tones of voice that get under our skin really quickly. Mine would be sarcasm. Or what tone of voice inspires your trust? What tone helps you listen? We can learn from listening to other people and incorporate what we're learning into creating our own reliable tone. So, how do we practice? How do we build on this? Well, first of all, you absolutely need to listen to recordings of your voice. And every time I say this, I can just hear people's eyes rolling. And they're going, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Here's why we don't want to do that. As I am speaking to you right now, I am hearing my voice about 8, 10, maybe even 12 notes lower than you are hearing it. This is the voice I am used to listening to throughout my life, really. But I'm hearing that tone, that voice, because it is bouncing off bones in my skull and then in my ear before I hear it. So I hear it lower than you hear it. When I record my voice, which I've been doing for over 30 years now, I am a bit squeamish every time because I'm hearing a voice that I don't recognize. It's much higher than the voice I hear all day long. So we have to get comfortable with that. We have to know what other people are hearing when we speak. Being an excellent communicator, creating great conversations, we have to know what other people are hearing when we speak. And they are not hearing the voice we are hearing. We want to stay well hydrated. Vocal cords are a wet organ, And when we don't get enough water or fluids in our system, our voice can crack. It can create an element of our not being confident, perhaps, or it can give our voice a roughness that isn't necessary if we are drinking fluids. And if we are someone who's on the phone all day, maybe doing customer service all day, we want to warm up our voice. We can damage our vocal cords if we don't warm up our voice. But also, there are individuals that earn their living with their voice. These are voice actors that you usually hear in the promos before a movie, on commercials, and so on. And they always warm up their voice so they can get their best tone, but also so they can work with their voice. If your voice isn't warmed up, you have less control over how you sound. So the simplest way to warm up your voice is to sing. Now, I'm battling a cold, so I may not be able to do this well, but I'm going to try. It doesn't matter what you sing, right? You can sing, row, row, row your boat. Doesn't matter. But warm up your voice before you go into an extended period of having long conversations. And the old-fashioned, very simple trick that I learned when I was supporting myself as a receptionist in university is this. So these are muscles, and when we smile, we change the sound of our voice. So you can be at the end of your day and the phone rings, and my goodness, you're so tired or distracted or ready to get going to something else. Get that sound out of your voice simply by doing this. This can be heard on the other end of the phone. It can be heard in a meeting. It can be heard on camera. So foundation skill number 2 is pacing. And the definition of pacing is getting someone to run a race at a particular speed by running with them. What does this have to do with conversations? Well, when we are speaking to someone, we want to speak at a pace that allows them to hear and understand us. If we speak too fast, that will be difficult for them to listen and take in everything that we're sharing with them. If we speak too slowly for them, that can cause them to get frustrated, impatient, and sort of tune out. So, for the most part, you want to be paying attention to the pace of the other person and pace yourself roughly the same. It doesn't have to be identical, but you want to acknowledge how they speak is a good indication of also how they take in information. So you want your pace to equal theirs. Now, this allows us to create that partnership, that calm partnership that I've talked about. And that's really what we want to do in all of our conversations with prospects, clients, and customers. When we speak too fast, too slow, we're going to limit our ability to communicate effectively. But there is one caveat here. And that is when you are on the phone with someone who's emotional and you need to communicate with them. When someone's emotional, they can't hear. So if they are talking really fast and they're upset and we talk at that same speed, nothing is going to happen. So what we want to do is help them calm down, help them slow down. And we do that by starting to speak slightly slower. And over a few sentences, you will notice that this acts like a mirror, and they also automatically start to talk a bit slower. So if they're talking really fast, you don't want to be down here in terms of speed. It's about they're talking really fast. You're just going to speak a bit slower. And when they join you, as it acts like a mirror, you can slow down a bit more, etc. So that you're helping them calm down simply by changing the speed of your voice, which will act like a mirror and bring them towards you. The third is enunciation. It's a very old fashioned word, I think, that we don't talk about very much, um, yet it matters. It's about the articulation of words. And if you're interested, um, there's a film from the 60s called My Fair Lady, and enunciation is actually a character in that film. It has a big impact on the storyline. It's quite a lovely movie. In any case, when we're talking with prospects, customers, or clients, we want to make sure that no matter what their situation is or their first language, whatever is at their end, that they can hear our words, that they can understand our words. And pacing is part of that, but also enunciation. If we run all our words together, the other person will not necessarily understand us. So, enunciation involves saying each word separately. So, I'm running all those words together. And I want to say enunciation involves saying each word separately. Big difference. And when we enunciate clearly, and sometimes there are words that go together. It is. We don't necessarily say it is. We'll say it is. And that's fine. But also throughout the sentence, throughout your description of your product or your steps for solving a software problem, you want to remember to enunciate your words so that the other person can hear and understand what you're saying. And lastly, the fourth foundation skill is the language that we use when we're speaking to someone else. And some of you already know this story, but for those that don't, I'm going to share it again. When I started my very first business, I had no background in sales. Been a journalist, so I knew a lot about talking on the phone, but I didn't know anything about selling. I was in my late 20s and I was calling CEOs and senior VPs. I was nervous and I was visualizing with every call that I was interrupting this person because in those days there wasn't even voicemail. They always answered. And so when they answered the phone, I would say, "Hi, Linda, it's Mary Jane, and I'm just calling." And I used that word just because I was nervous. And for some reason, I thought it was polite to say, "I'm just calling," because again, I was visualizing that I was interrupting them. But that wasn't the impact of the word. When I recorded my calls and I heard that, I listened to my openings of my calls, I realized they weren't hearing nervous and polite. They were hearing, "I'm just calling. I got nothing better to do. I'm just sitting here dialing numbers." Or, "I'm just calling. I got nothing important to say here." And what was amazing to me and why I eventually became the phone lady is that as soon as I got rid of that word, I started selling. So words matter. They can send a relationship in the wrong direction. They can create relationship and trust. So a couple of things we want to keep in mind. One is we want to think about what I call iffy words, words that kind of muddy our message, like just, or wondering, or maybe. There'll be other examples that you think of. Again, this is why it's important to record yourself. Listen to listen back or read the transcripts of your videos, of your video meetings. Record yourself on the phone. Pay attention, really pay attention to what you're saying. The same is true for vocal tics. I was doing an audit of phone calls for a client last week, and one of the individuals says, okay, 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 all the time. Like it's constant. And it's tiring for the listener to hear that all the time. Sure, uh huh. So that's my recent one. For some reason, I have started saying the word so a lot. Don't know where that comes from. So vocal tics go in and out of our communication. We want to catch them as soon as we can and do our best to eliminate them because they muddy our communication. Two other things. If you are making outbound calls and you're calling someone you've never spoken to before, skip the how are you at the beginning of that conversation. And the reason is we are now into decades of inbound telemarketing. And often those calls are not about creating a relationship, they're about making a fast sale of something. And they always start with the person at the other end saying, "Hi, Mary Jane, how are you?" Well, it's a voice I don't recognize, a person I don't know, and that makes me immediately defensive. So you are representing your company, your product, your service, offering customer support to someone who's already a client. You don't want that defensiveness at the beginning of the call. So you simply want to say, "Hi, it's Mary Jane, and the reason for my call today is." And lastly, when we call someone and we say, "Is this a good time?" That's a close-ended question. It's a yes or a no. And we know that everyone is completely overwhelmed. So what we want to do instead is we want to be really present at the beginning of the call and we want to react to what we hear around the other person. So we might say, if we hear a lot of voices around them, we might say, "It sounds like you're in a meeting." If we can hear they're in their car, we might say, "It sounds like you're driving your car." This is an open statement. So they can say, "No, no, there's just a lot of people in the office today." Or, "Yeah, I'm in my car, but I have you on Bluetooth. Everything's fine." To give you an example, I was following up on a proposal to a client, and I only had their cell phone number. So I called, and when they answered, I could hear children around them having a fabulous time. And so what I said was, "It sounds like I've caught you at an inconvenient time." And they said, "Yes. We are packing to go on a bit of a vacation." However, they knew I was calling to follow up on that proposal, and they gave me the information of what next steps were. Now, if I had called and said, "Is this a good time?" I'm pretty sure they would have said, "No, I'm getting ready to go on vacation, call me in 3 weeks." So those open-ended statements, as opposed to, "Is this a good time?" will get you into a conversation more often, will get you some information more often. Thanks for listening. Share this with others if you think it's of value for them. Questions, comments, please get in touch. Would love to get feedback on how these videos are helpful. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, there's a link there so that you can find me and we can get connected. Take care. Have a good day.